Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock and it's time for another video. Now, this is a video that was requested a couple of times on the Q&A. If you guys don't know, if people ask me a question on the Q&A, and it's kind of a meatier question that takes more than a couple of minutes to answer, I'll make a video about it, and that's what I've done. In fact, I think we've broken history right now, because they asked the question on the Q&A that's going up on Sunday, and I said I'd make a video, but I found a bit of spare time to put something together, so I'm making a video about it now. And what we're going to be talking about today is transitions. You can always tell when I take things seriously, when I have notes. And this is going to be a video about how to transition from one trick to the next. Now, this is something that is very, very overlooked when you're planning a presentation, when you're planning an act structure, or you're planning a set list when you're doing walk around magic or close-up magic. A lot of people don't think about the correlation between trick 1 and trick 2 and trick 3. And the common thing that you see a lot of magicians doing is going, right, for my first trick, did you like that? Now we're going to do this for my second trick. And it's a completely unrelated thing. You see it a lot on stage, where stage performers will say, for my first trick, for my next trick, and they'll literally just go into a box and pull various different tricks out. Now, the problem with this is it kind of it's not as good as if you're trying to make your act theatrical. So if you're on stage, trying to make each routine transition into the next routine. So at no point are you saying, right, for my next trick. You can't really tell where one trick ends and the other trick begins. Kind of think about it like an ambitious card. If you actually think about it, one card coming to the top of the deck, that is in essence an ambitious card, right? That's a one phase thing. If you do an ambitious card with 5 different phases where they all come to the top of the deck 5 times, that's 5 separate tricks technically, but when you do them in the context of an ambitious card, they flow together seamlessly. Well, what transitions are is it's just doing that, but with completely different tricks. So think of it as a multi-phase act, so to speak. And I think that's the best way to do it. And it's something that a lot of magicians don't think about. They think about the trick, they practice the trick, they practice that one particular trick, but then they don't think about the transition between tricks. And it's a lot of the time, new performers in close-up, new performers on stage, they'll struggle to go through those transitions, because what they'll do is they'll practice each individual trick. Right, I'm going to practice this trick. Okay, I've got the presentation, I've got the scripting for this trick down, I've got the technical side of things for this trick down. Now I'm going to think about this trick, I'm going to learn this trick, I'm going to learn this trick. So when they go out and they perform to people, they don't really know how to link from one to the other, because that's not something that they've thought about or they've rehearsed. And so it's very much a case of, did you like that one? Cool, I'm going to put it away. I'm going to do a different one instead. So let me show you a different trick now, okay? So in this video, I'm just going to give you a few tips. I think very, very strongly about transitions. I train all of the people that come and work for my kids' entertainment company. And one of the things in training that we spend a long time thinking about is when you're doing a show for kids, how do you stop yourself from ever saying, for my next trick, for my next trick? And it's something I think about in close-up. It's something I definitely think about on stage. And I think it's something that you should think about as well. Whether you perform close-up, stage, kids, whatever, I really think this is something that you should think about. So, without further ado, we're going to get into it. I've got a few random points here, a few random points that I want to make that might help you think this way. So without further ado, let's get into it and look at point number 1. Okay, so the first thing that I advise you to do, let's look at this from a close-up worker's point of view first of all. The first thing that I would advise you to do is make a list of all of the tricks that you are happy performing in a real-world environment. Let's say you are a walk-around magician and you're going to go and do walk-around magic, right? Think of all of the tricks that you're happy to perform in a walk-around situation and write them down. You can't make this up. You have to kind of be a little bit organized when you're thinking of transitions. So write down all of the tricks that you would be happy if you were at a gig right now and you were going up to a group of people. Write down any trick that you would be happy performing to that group of people. Don't say to me, oh, I've bought this trick a couple of days ago and it's definitely going in my act, but I haven't learned it yet. That's not a trick that you're doing right now. Don't say to me, oh, I've got this trick, I just need to come up with a presentation for it because I haven't actually got it where I want it. No, I'm talking about the stuff that you are happy to do right now. If you are performing in front of the most important, influential entertainment director in the world and they could give you the biggest break of your career, what routines would you be happy to perform for those people? That's really important. So make a list of every individual trick. Now, it's the same on stage as well, really. When you're putting a stage show together, think of every single trick that you're happy to perform on stage. This is not a video about character. This is not a video about making sure that the tricks fit your personality. That should be a given. And if it's not, look for other videos on Magic TV to do with that subject. But I'm assuming that all of these tricks are good. All of these tricks fit your character. All of them are well rehearsed. All of them are well scripted. All of them presentationally make sense. Make a list of them. So you should have a list of all of the individual tricks that you're happy to do in the environment in which you want to actually think about when it comes to transitions. Now, when you have that list of tricks, and again, let's look at this from a close-up worker's point of view first of all, because when you're a close-up worker, you have lots of different sets. Close-up workers, when you're doing close-up, it's kind of really interesting. I kind of think of performing close-up a little bit like a choose-your-own-adventure. In, you know, those old books where it's like, okay, if you want to do this, go to page 15. If you want to do this, go to page 45. And you're kind of choosing which direction that the story takes you in. I kind of think of close-up work a little bit like that, because you don't know where you're starting, you don't know where you're ending. When I walk up to a group of people, I don't know what I'm going to start with. I'm going to introduce myself to the group and I'm going to get a vibe off them, and based on that vibe, I'm going to go in one direction, and then I can go in a different direction depending on how that group feels, right? Now, on stage, it's less of a choose-your-own-adventure, and it's more of a kind of a book. You have a beginning, you have an end, and you have kind of a narrative that you have to follow to get to the end, right? And you don't jump around. You don't open up a story, read the first page, then go to page 70 and then go back to page 2. You just don't do that, right? And on stage, you want to plan everything out to the nth degree. Okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. So with close-up work, if you're a close-up magician and you're wanting to think about transitions in between tricks, the first thing that you do, you've obviously got your list of your tricks. Look for links between tricks, and the link can be for any reason whatsoever. And then get a second piece of paper and write down all of the tricks that you think link together. So, for example, you might say a coins across links into a three fly, because three fly is a more visual version of coins across. So you could say, I'm going to do a coins across, then I'm going to go into three fly, and I'm going to say to people, let's take it to the next level. I'm going to try and make these coins jump at the tips of the fingers. That's a link, right? Anytime that you can think how one trick can link to another trick, that is a great link. And right now, we're just writing down links. And you might want to put in brackets afterwards, what's the link? So in this case, it might be coins across, dash, three fly, brackets, making the trick more impressive by doing it at the fingertips. But it doesn't just have to be that. There's a million different ways that you could link. So, for example, it might be that you're doing coin vexed, David Penn's coin vexed with a coin. So you're bending a coin. So you borrow a coin, you bend it. Well, there's a couple of different ways that you could go from there. You could do a coin to impossible location. So you could take that coin, now it's bent, and make it vanish and make it appear somewhere else, like in a key fob or something like that. It could be that you take that coin and you say, well, I've just shown you how to make it bend. Let me see if I can use my psychic mind powers and make it actually float. And you might want to do some sort of loops type thing, or the Oblivion by Tom Wright, and you might want to make it float in the air. That's another direction that you could go. You could stop using the coin and go in a different direction, but focus on the bending. So you could say, well, I've bent the coin, but maybe you couldn't see it because it's a small coin, it was in my hand. So this time I'm going to use a fork, and you go into liquid metal, for example, right? It could be that you go into liquid metal. So a lot of the time, when you see a trick, there's going to be various other tricks that you can link into. Your job is to find all of those links and find all of those transitions and think about them and make sure they make sense logically. You've got to have a logical reason to go from one particular routine to the other. Okay, as long as you've got a logical reason, that's absolutely fine. And this exercise that you're doing right now is about finding all of those links and finding them out before you actually go and perform. So you've thought about it ahead of time, and you're making notes, because you might come up with hundreds of these. You never know. It could be, for example, that you're doing a 2-card transposition. So you're doing a transposition between 2 cards. Well, where can you go from a 2-card transposition? Well, there's a lot of different ways you could go. You could go into a different way of doing the 2-card transposition, but more impressive. So for example, if you were doing a 2-card transposition with a deck, you might do the 2-card transposition with just the 2 cards and no other cards in play, which makes it more impressive. And you could actually point that out. Now, maybe you think that there's something going on with the rest of the deck, so let me put the rest of the deck away, and I'm just going to use those 2 cards. It could be that you go into a coin transposition because you say, well, you know what, I've made these 2 cards change places, but let's see if we can make it a little bit more difficult. I'm going to use 2 coins. I'm going to do the same thing, but with 2 coins. Now, realistically, is it more difficult using 2 coins instead of 2 cards? Arguably not. But that seems like it makes sense to a spectator. If you can find a plausible reason that makes sense to the audience, that's half the battle. But it might be. So you could say, hey, I'm going to do a transposition with this, or I'm going to do a transposition with that. It could be that you're going into a completely different effect with just those 2 cards. And you say, hey, well, you've seen me make these 2 cards change places. I'm now going to try and tear them both up and put them back together, but fuse them into different parts. And you might want to go into something like that and do like a torn and restored fused transposition type thing. There's so many different ways that you can actually link one routine to the other routine. So you're opening up with Gypsy Thread, for example. Brilliant. So where do you go from Gypsy Thread? Well, it might be that you do a different version of Gypsy Thread, but maybe like the Sellotape version by Blake Voigt. And you say, well, let me see if I can do this again, but I'll use Sellotape. Now, it's more impressive to use Sellotape. And again, you talk about how, hey, I'm going to do it this way because it's more impressive for you, the audience, to see it this way. Or it could be that you go into a rope trick and you say, well, you know, maybe you can't see what's going on because I'm using thread, so let's take this to the next level. It could be that you take the thread that you've just restored and you have someone pick a card, sign it, lose it in the pack, put that in a bag, and you dangle the string into the thread into the bag, and you do a fishing routine where you bring out the card that they've picked. And you're using the same prop, but for something completely different. The point I'm trying to make is when you're doing close-up, you want to write down all of these links. And you want to, when you wrote them all down, you're going to have dozens of them. You're going to have, depending on how many routines you do, and depending on how many different ways you can think of transitioning from one routine to the other, you might have literally hundreds of transitions. Your job then is to think about what are your favorites and look through them all and go, you know what, I really like that. I really like the thought of transitioning from this routine to this routine. Those are 2 of my favorite tricks, and putting them together like that just makes sense, right? Now, when you're performing on stage or you're doing a kid show or something, when you're in front of an audience, it's the same sort of thing. You just need to think, but you've got a show structure normally. So you develop that show structure based around the tricks that you're doing, right? You base them around the tricks that you're doing. So, for example, one of the things that I do is I love doing Cue the Magic. Now, Cue the Magic is a great routine by Angelo Carbone. I love performing that. What I typically do is I will do something that will involve 2 spectators on stage. It might be a cards across. It might be a suit jacket escape, for example. It could be anything that involves 2 spectators. So I bring 2 spectators up on stage. I do whatever routine I'm doing. And then at the end of it, I go, you know, here's Mike and John. Give them both a big round of applause. Mike, you can go and sit down. Thanks for helping. John, out of you and Mike. Mike was great, but you were better. You were my favorite volunteer. So I've got a prize for you. Your prize is you get to perform a trick on your own in front of this entire audience. Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to see John perform a trick in front of everybody himself? Of course you would. Give it up for John, everybody. And now you're into Cue the Magic. So now I'm using the fact that I've had 2 people up on stage, and I'm rather than going, okay, right, now I've done that trick, now I'm going to do this trick, it's seemingly kind of transitioning into that particular set by me saying that, hey, I've got a prize for you. I'm going to let you do this in front of the whole audience, right? Now, Ryland does Cue the Magic as well. But Ryland typically will transition into it from David Penn's Oddest Ball. So he'll talk about how he's a kid and he's not really a mentalist, but he's been practicing mentalism, and he's going to show everybody here the mentalism, and he does Oddest Ball, which is hilarious. And at the end of it, the person that he's got on stage to do it everyone's laughing, obviously. And he goes, well, what did you expect? I'm 11 years old. I'm a kid. Do you really think I can read minds? Honestly, anybody could read minds better than me. You could read minds better than me. Have you ever read someone's mind before? I bet the audience would like to see you read minds. Would you guys like to see him read a mind in front of it? So he's kind of doing a similar thing in that he's got somebody up and he's using that person to go into a second routine, cue the magic, but he's going into it. The approach to go from that particular routine to the other routine is completely different. So the point that I'm saying is on stage, whether you're doing it in front of a family audience, a bunch of kids, or whatever it is that you're doing, you need to think about how you're going to go from one trick to another. What are you going to do? What's your transition? What's your moment? So another example is in our Family Illusion show, me and Ryland have kind of a competition against each other, and he always wins. He always wins. It's engineered so that he always wins. And he does a trick and I do a trick. And the audience votes for who the best magician is. They always vote for Ryland. And I go, well, okay, you win, dude. You win the whole thing. What would you like as your prize? And he goes, well, I want to do my Harry Potter act. Oh, nobody wants to see you here dressed as Harry Potter. Oh, you do? You want to see Ryland's Harry Potter act? So the transition into going into that is because Ryland just won this competition and he wants to do this as a kind of a prize for winning this competition. So think about the links. That's very important. And make as many links as you can and then use the ones that you think are appropriate, right? That's a big part of transitioning. Okay, I've got another note here. I mentioned this briefly when I was talking about the second point, but I'm going to mention it again just to reiterate it. Make notes of all your transitions and keep them up. I ideally would type them up if I were you, because you're going to forget them over time, right? So you want to keep track of these. You've done the hard work. You've come up with lots of different ways of transitioning from this trick to this trick to this trick. You can now create sets on the fly. So with close-up magic, as you go up to a group, you know in your head, right, okay, I think I'm going to open with this group with a purse frame routine that's going to end with the production of an AirPod case. Okay, I'm going to do this, blah, 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 blah. And in the end of the AirPod case, I'm going to take one of the AirPods out and I'm going to go into a routine with that AirPod. Brilliant. Boom, 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 boom. Now, at the end of that, I'm going to take that AirPod case and I'm going to give it to somebody and I'm going to have a card picked and it's going to vanish and it's going to appear in the AirPod case. And it suddenly feels like you're just doing one theatrical act as opposed to a bunch of different tricks. Now, you can literally, like I say, it's a choose your own adventure. You can literally go in any direction. But my advice, like I say, is to keep notes of all these transitions so that over time you can go back and look at the notes. And as you're putting new set lists together, you've got that information based on the hard work that you've already done. Okay, the next note that I've got on here is I've wrote, can a trick be framed as a transition or a test? So let me give you an idea. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking a trick and making it a transition, kind of framing it as a transition trick. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I'll give you an example of how you can do this in a kid's show, and I'll give you an example of how you can do it in a close-up performance. So in a kid's show, one of the most popular kids routines of all time is Dots Next. That's the one where you've got a big white card or a big white board and it's got a dot on it and you say, look, there's 1 dot on this side, there's 3 dots on this side, 4 dots on the, all that stuff, right? Now, Gary Dunn came up with a fantastic presentation for that prop. And the presentation he came up with was using it as a clever test. So he says to his audience, hey, hopefully you can see me and you can hear me. Put your hands up if you're clever. Okay, I only perform for clever audiences. Let me do a clever test. And he says, right, how many dots here? 1, fantastic. How many dots on this side? And the presentation of the trick is not, look at what I can do, look at how clever I am, look, there's dots appearing everywhere. It's this test that he's doing on the audience, and the audience keep failing at the test, you know, even though dots keep appearing that they're not aware of. It's a great presentation, it really is, and he uses it as a warm-up. So as part of his warm-up, he says, hey, you have to be able to see me, you have to be clever, and he does it as part of his warm-up. Now, one thing that we do here is we will use that trick as a transition into a puppet routine. So we'll say, hey, who here has got a best friend? Well, I've got a best friend, his name's Charlie, he's a dog, and Charlie is absolutely amazing. Who'd like to meet Charlie? Put your hand up if you'd like to meet Charlie. Well, he doesn't just meet anybody, he only meets really clever people. So I'll do a clever test on you. If you pass this clever test, you get to meet Charlie. So now this trick is not even being framed as a trick. It's being framed as a test. Now it's entertaining, it's engaging, the kids absolutely love it, but it's a great way to get away from for my next trick, right? Now an example of doing that in close-up is using, for example, a which hand routine. So let's say, or an Amverdi die style routine. Let's say you're using an Amverdi die. And let's just say that, right, so you say, right, I'm going to show you the most amazing trick of all time. Now, in order for, I'm going to show you the amazing, it's a mentalist doing this, so you wouldn't use trick. I'm going to show you the most amazing feat of mentalism of all time. I'm going to show you something that you could only put down to coincidence, but I guarantee you it's not coincidence. And it involves this deck of cards. However, I can't just do this on people. I need to be able to influence you in a way that you don't feel like you're being influenced. So we're going to try and do something with the die. Can you take that die for me? Shake it up, hold it in between your hands, have a look at the number, look at me. Okay, concentrate on the number. I'm going to say numbers, and I just want you to look at me, and I want you to just try not to give anything away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you smiled on 3. That tells me it's a 3. Let's do it again. You seem to be very easy to read. That's what I'm looking for. Give it another shake, have a look at it. Right, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, you immediately, it was a 1, isn't it? It's a 1. So you're doing Amverdi die as a way of testing this member of the audience to see if they're going to be able to help you with whatever it is that you're going to be doing next. And a which hand is the same thing. Look, take something behind your back. Brilliant, get out. Fantastic. Concentrate on the thing. Oh, it's in that hand. Brilliant. Okay, I'm starting to see the way that you think. Now, let's see if we can take this to the next level. I gave you a deck of cards. You're going to name a card. You're going to name a number. Whatever routine you want to go into. The routine you go into isn't important. What's important is you're taking this Amverdi die routine or this which hand routine and you're framing it as a test that you need to do on yourself with the person that you're performing to. Because if they don't pass this test, if you can't do this on them, then what you're about to see next, which is even more impossible, isn't going to work. So that's an example of how you can actually take a trick and you can change, as it says here, change it and frame it as a transition piece. So when you're creating your set lists, as we talked about earlier on, think about if there's tricks you can do to transition from one thing to another thing. So I'll give you one more example. If you're a close-up performer, it might be a case of, you know what, I'm going to show you something that's absolutely incredible using 4 coins, but I need to make sure I can misdirect you. I need to make sure that I know how you think. So I'm going to show you something with 1 coin, and if this works, we'll then bring a few extra coins in. Look, watch that coin. If I take it and squeeze it, it disappears. It goes behind your ear. Look, I'm going to do it again. Cup your hands together. Did you see it go on your shoulder? Oh, you look like you're freaked out about that. Look, let me take it and do this. It went back on your shoulder. Now look, it's vanished. Do you know where it is? Look under your watch. Oh my God. So now you're doing like a 1 coin flurry style coin on shoulder style routine as a transition into a longer coin trick. But the trick with 1 coin is being framed as a test to see if you can actually work with this person so that you can do something else with them. So when you're creating your set lists, when you're creating your routines, whether it be on stage or it be close up, think about ways that you can frame individual tricks to make them feel like it's not even a trick, it's something that you're doing to test them to see if you can actually do something else on them in the future. Okay, so I briefly mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. I've put down here, can one trick lead into another trick? For example, coins across to 3 fly. And coins across and 3 fly is a great example. In fact, I got this from Paul Wilson, Paul Wilson. And I remember reading in a very old ebook of his 3 fly. And his thinking behind 3 fly was that if you're going to perform 3 fly on somebody, you really should perform a normal coins across beforehand, because a lay audience doesn't appreciate how amazing 3 fly is. And by performing a normal coins across first, it kind of educates them into what a coins across is, coins jumping from one place to another, which means that then you can do a 3 fly and they'll appreciate how amazing it is because they've got a frame of reference. And that's very good thinking and something that I've always considered when I'm creating my magic. But one thing that to take from that is doing a trick and then doing a better version of that trick is a great lead in. And I'm not saying you do I'm not saying you do 21 card trick, the classic 21 card trick, and then you do like some mem deck routines, and because the 21 card trick is boring. I mean, some people can make it interesting, but generally as a rule it's quite boring, right? But coins across is a great trick in its own right. So if you do a coins across routine, you impress them, and then you say, well, that's pretty good, but here's the thing. A lot of people say to me, I didn't know what was happening because my hand was closed around the coins. So I'm going to do it again for you, but this time I'm going to bring the coins up here so you can see the coins the entire time. Now that is plausible. You're planting a seed of doubt in the spectator's mind. This is really good, but my hand was closed the whole time. And they're internally thinking, well, that's right, his hand was closed the whole time. So I'm going to make it more impressive by doing this. And then you do your next trick, which is even more impressive, right? Think about other ways that you can do that. So how can you lead into another effect? Another great example is doing a rope routine, like a fiber optic style routine, which then leads into a ring and rope routine. Now that's something that Ryland does in his close-up an awful lot, but fiber optics is a great trick, and you end up with 3 pieces of rope. You can take 2 of those pieces of rope and put them away, bring out a ring, and now you can go into a ring and rope routine. That's a great example of a lead-in, how you can lead into another routine. Fiber optics leads into ring and rope very, very easily. But then you can go from ring and rope, for example, if you wanted to, into ring and string. So you could say, well, you know what? The thing is, maybe you think that this is a special ring, which it's not. You can see that. You've examined it. But just in case you still think it is, I'm going to borrow your ring. And now you go into a ring and string routine with their ring. It's another perfect way of transitioning. So when you're thinking about the transitions, think about how one trick can lead into another trick, which creates that really nice set. Okay, so the next note that I've made here, and this is a little bit similar to when I talked about framing a trick as a transition or a test. On that point, I've put down here, try to think about how you can adapt the premise of the trick so you're not just saying over and over again, for my next trick. Now, the reason a lot of people say for my next trick is because they've got nothing else to say. What you're thinking about here, or what you're talking about, is the hook line. Now, the hook line is what you say to grab people's attention, right? It's what you use to hook them in. That's what a hook line is. So how can you phrase, as it says here, how can you adapt the premise of the trick so it's not for my next trick, right? And it doesn't have to be a test. So, for example, you could do a bank night style routine where you're giving people a chance to win some money, and you win. And then you could say, well, you know what? You were quite easy to read there. I'm going to try and do something that's very, very dangerous. I'm going to basically do that same thing again, but I'm going to make the odds way bigger. Because what I have here is I have a fish hook and I have some string. And I don't normally do this. If that last routine didn't go as well as it did, I wouldn't be doing this right now. But I'm going to give this a shot. And then you're going into hook, right? So you're going into hook. Hook is arguably a more dramatic trick because you could potentially rip your mouth to bits, right? So it's an arguably a more impressive trick. If you have a trick that leads into hook, that establishes that you can do what you're trying to do with the fish hooks, this then elevates what you're doing to a next level. Now, if you're really smart, you can get an aspect of that previous trick wrong. So you can go, well, whatever the trick might be, it's something where they make choices and you're 99% correct, but there's one element that you weren't correct in. And you can then turn around and you can say, look, that went quite well. There was that one little problem there, but generally as a rule, it went well. I'm now going to take this to the next level. I'm confident that this is going to work with you. So I'm going to use this fish hook and these threads. And then you say, now, obviously, if I make that mistake again, we're going to have big problems, so I need to really focus and concentrate on this. So think about how you can adapt the premise of the trick. So think about the hook line, what you say, what the trick is all about. Think about how you can adapt that hook line. Think about how you can adapt that premise so that you're not saying for my next trick. It could be, there's a lot of storytellers out there. It could be you're telling a story. I'm not a natural storyteller. It's not something I do. So I would never create a transition that revolves around me telling a story, but it's something that might work for you. There's lots of different options. You just need to figure out what's best for you. And the final point that I'm going to make about transitions is be open to new tricks and new presentations. So this is something that I'm very, very open to. I'm always watching presentations. I'm not just presentations in magic. I'm always looking for interesting things that are in pop culture that I can reference during the course of a trick that people will be able to relate to, or things that I'm really interested in that I can talk enthusiastically about, because if I'm enthusiastic about something, everybody else will as well. So, for example, Doctor Who. I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who. If I create a trick that's all based around Doctor Who, it allows me to use that as a premise and therefore as a transition into that particular routine. So think about how you can actually take things from pop culture and how you can create new presentations around the tricks that you already do to create transitions using those premises. And it's the same with tricks. Look out for new tricks. Look out for new tricks all the time. Magic button is obviously my trick. But if it wasn't my trick, I would have bought it in a heartbeat, because the whole idea of pressing the button and having the magic happen, I love that premise, as you would imagine, because it's my trick, right? But I love that premise, and I use that premise even with invisible buttons. I'll be like, press the invisible button, press the invisible button. So if I saw magic button, I would immediately 100% know that that trick was perfect for me. Regardless of method, regardless of routines, I knew that trick would be for me. So, be open to new tricks coming out that might help you transition from one thing to another. You might have something that you're struggling to think of a transition for, and when you kind of see that particular thing and you're like, no, that trick's perfect, I'm going to use that because that's going to create the perfect transition. Just be open to all of this stuff and make sure that you've got your ear to the ground. So there you go. That's the video. Now, it's a very different video this week, but I feel really passionately about making content for Magic TV that's not just about, hey, here's the 3 best tricks with this, here's the fun. Not that there's anything wrong with those tricks. I love those tricks. I love doing review shows. I love doing interviews. I love doing review show specials. But one thing we're trying to do a lot more of on Magic TV these days is doing a lot more advice, a lot more guidance, a lot more stuff, like what you saw me and Matt do on Tuesday when we were talking about approaching tables. It's really important to me that there's a lot of advice and guidance on this channel. And what I want you to do now is let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you agree or do you disagree? I want to know. Do you think that transitions are important? How much do you focus on transitions within your act, whether you're a close-up magician or a stage magician? I really want to know. Now, don't forget, you can like this video and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos like this. But most importantly, go and check out The Netrix. That's www.thenetrix.com. It's my online streaming platform for magicians. You can go and check that out. See what all the fuss is about. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tricks and sleights and routines and concepts. And if you like Magic TV, you'll love The Netrix. So if you want to go check it out, you can. Either way, I'll be back again very, very soon with another video. My name's Craig from Magic TV.